I don't know if I've met some of you before. If so, hello again, and for the first time, hello for the first time. Glad to be here, and as it was said, I work with schools and universities throughout, not only here at FEFU, but also throughout the whole Russian Far East. And I'm very glad to do that. So I was asked today to talk to you about Russian American accents, and we can do that. And I have some other things we could also talk about, but also in the time that we have, hopefully you'll want to talk about some other things as well. I want to keep this informal, not do a lecture or anything like that, but just have a conversation, really. So now I can talk to you about accents, and you may have questions. I mean, we'll watch a YouTube video clip that I found. It's about 6 minutes, and this guy uses, not very good, but he does an okay job of giving accents, American accents, from all over the country. Ones that we'll talk about. But some of you, those of you who have been to America, have been in a lot of these different areas where there's accents. You've been to Texas, so like talk like this. Right? They talk real slow and with a Texas accent, a southern accent. Virginia is somewhat southern, so they have it. Florida is south, but they don't really have a southern accent. Where else people were? Like Arizona, in the Alaska. I've never been to Alaska, but well, it's probably hard for you to tell. Can you tell the difference in English accents, American accents, when you hear them? Anybody? I know it's hard, like, when you don't know a language, it isn't your native language, a lot of times it's hard to differentiate the accents.
Well, if that's like people from Mexico or China and if they speak English, that's really distinct. You can understand it.
Right.
From Americans from different parts of America, it can be hard.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about. It can be hard, because I know people tell me here, different parts of Russia. I'm sorry? I didn't hear that. Who meant?
Conversation.
Oh, okay.
I say about Chinese people who speak English. It's much harder to understand than American.
Yeah, and it's harder for me to distinguish between someone who, I've been told that people here can tell if someone's from Moscow and that sort of thing by the way they talk, their dialect, and I wouldn't be able to tell that. So I know a lot of times, like when I worked and lived in Korea, everybody who spoke English, they thought were American. So someone from England or Australia, who to me has a pretty thick accent, they said they couldn't tell the difference between an English or an Australian accent and an American accent. So they assumed everybody was American. So that's why I asked that. But we can certainly talk about the different ones. You know, we have the southern accent, which is, they call it a drawl. They kind of draw out their words, like howdy, and things like that. In where I'm from, in New York City, none of you have been to New York yet, have you? Oh, you have? Oh, you did? You went to New York as well? Okay, do you like New York? Yeah. Yeah, people talk pretty fast there. So it's hard to understand. I have a tendency, being born there, to talk fast. And I try to remember to talk slower than I normally do. But what you do in New York, you talk fast, you walk fast, you think fast, you eat fast. Everything is fast in New York. Did you find that? Really fast. And we call that a hustle and bustle. And so we have a distinct accent. It's nasal. You hear a lot of it coming through the nose and really fast. What did you think? Well, let's talk about Alaska first. Not Alaska. Let's talk about Texas. What did you think about the Texas accent? Could you tell?
Texas people that live in Texas are pretty pretty easy to understand what they say.
Right. So if you talk slower, then it is easier. And it's the opposite of New York in a lot of ways, because they move slower, they act slower, they speak slower. But sometimes people in really southern parts of the United States, like the state of Georgia, the state of Alabama, places like that, have a really thick southern accent. I can't understand it. They just talk with their dialect is such, I mean, they're speaking English words, but unless you're from there, other parts of the United States don't understand a lot of people from the South because of how they pronounce words. And New York, what did you think of New York accents or dialect? Could you follow what they were saying in English? Or did they talk too fast sometimes?
There are a lot of different people in Europe, so...
That's true. If they're not New Yorkers, native New Yorkers, then that's different. But I'm thinking of native New Yorkers. It might be more difficult to understand. There's also, anybody go to Boston?
I've been to, but I don't know.
Didn't notice? Oh, it's maybe if they're from actually Boston or New England, you know, the northern part. I didn't bring a map. I should have brought a map. But the northern part of the East Coast, that's New England. Boston's there, Maine, New Hampshire. They have a different kind of accent. Their A's, they stretch their A's. So I would say car, they'd say cat. I drove my cat. Things like that. What did you said, the gentleman in the back, you in Boston, did you notice a different kind of accent?
No, actually, I did not mention that. Well, for me, it was difficult to understand women.
Women?
Yeah.
That's probably for most men we have a hard time understanding.
Sometimes they spoke so fast and, I don't know, with some special features in their voice or something else. And for me, I tried to understand, but I had to re-ask and ask again my questions a couple of times. But then I tried to talk with men. It was easy.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, and that was in the Boston area? Or are you just finding that anywhere?
Well, I was in Boston and also New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. And you found it the same
Yes.
in both? Okay. Let's see. So yeah, there is definitely the Boston or the New England accent. And again, mostly they, like, I'll give there's a phrase people use, it has to do with Boston. Harvard Yard is a big green area in Harvard University where people can sit, it's like a park. They call it Harvard Yard. So what most people, if you're not from New England, you would pronounce it, but you're a Native American, you would say, I parked my car in Harvard Yard. The way they say it up in Boston and other parts of New England, they say, I packed my cat and had a yad. Can you hear the difference?
Yeah.
That's pretty much a Boston accent. Now a New York accent would be more like this, you know, you talk like this. Hey, what's up? How you doing? How you doing? That kind of thing. So I don't know if you got any of that when you were in New York. A lot of, hey, how's it going? So, and that's what I grew up with. And so people in Colorado, we don't, and that part of it, like Arizona, Colorado, you said Nevada, I don't see them having a distinct accent. They talk slow, they don't talk as slow as Texans, but they talk slower, they pronounce their words more clearer, but I couldn't tell somebody if they were from Colorado, or Arizona, or Texas, or New Mexico, Wyoming, that whole region, I couldn't tell the difference. I would be able to tell more the way they dressed than the way they spoke, because it all sounds the same to me. So we have that. Let's see. Did any of you, when you were in New York, did you go to New Jersey? The next state over, the little state of New Jersey? They have a bit of a, it's almost like a New York accent, but they would say it's more of a Jersey accent. But it sounds very much like that. Anybody go up to Minnesota or Wisconsin? No? That's up north, straight north from Chicago. Someone said they were in Chicago. Who said they were in Chicago? You. Straight up the next, that's Illinois. The next two states above that is Minnesota and Wisconsin. Now they I don't know if I can say, talk like they do. They say like things like, how you doing, don't you know? They have it's almost like a sing-song voice when they talk. And you can tell they're people who are from Minnesota. There's actually a foreign professor who's from Minnesota. When you talk to her, you can't tell she's from Minnesota, but she can, when you ask her to talk like someone from Minnesota, she can sound just like that. Don't you know? You say that a lot. And let's see, we talked about the South. Oh, down in, any of you been to New Orleans? New Orleans? Down in Louisiana? It's near Florida. They have Cajun accent. A Cajun accent is like a French accent. You know Cajun at all? It's a variation of Creole. It's from the French language. How many of you are studying French? A couple of you as another language? Yeah, so Creole or Cajun is a derivative of the French language, and it's only spoken down in the New Orleans area. And they have their own music, their own food, their own style of clothing, their own dance. It's really almost like another country within the United States, and in that part of the country, down in Louisiana, very far south. So much so that a true Cajun, when they speak English, they almost use, it's a whole different kind of language. It's actually, it's not similar, but Hawaii. Any of you been to Hawaii? Hawaii has their own English too, like those in the Cajun area of Louisiana, and they call it a pidgin language. Have you ever heard of that? You have? It's pidgin, not like the pigeon birds that you see out here. It's spelled differently, but pidgin means the same thing. I even wrote down the definition. It's a simplified language that develops as a means of communication between two or more groups that don't have the same language. So it's a jargon. It's also like lingua franca. They develop their own language where they can communicate similar to lingua franca, and it's a jargon. So Hawaii has their own English vocabulary that unless you're from there or know it, you can't really speak to them. Same thing with Creole. Unless you know it, you can't really have a very good conversation with them. And then there's also, there was one other one I was going to mention.
Rob, you have
Oh! Look at that. This is New Orleans here. This is Creole, the Creole area that I was talking about. We said we had people here in Florida, but in Florida there's a lot of Cubans. Who was in Florida?
She was.
And you too. Did you see a lot of Spanish-speaking people? Mostly from Cuba, down here. Do you know, there's another, they have a very, very big population, Spanish-speaking population. Besides Americans, you know what there's a very big community of in Florida that you may have seen, visited?
Russians?
Yes.
Yes.
They have a, did you?
I met a guy from Russian community. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Did you go to a Russian community?
I've been using Spanish.
Spanish, yeah. You were probably in Miami area?
Cubans.
Yeah, in Miami.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but yeah, I just found that out yesterday actually, that there's two big areas that have Russian communities. One is New York City. And any of you have been to New York? Did you visit areas that where a lot of Russian people live? Yeah? Brighton Beach, right.
I thought, as far as I remember, there are like a lot of people, maybe like 6 or 8 million Russians that live in New York and near the New York area.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that many. Because when I was growing up in New York, I ate a lot of Russian food. So when I came here, it was not all of it was new to me. It tastes better here, but I did taste some new foods. But you have borscht, right? We have it, but we call it borscht. Did you notice when you were in? I don't know if you had borscht when you were in New York, but we put a T at the end of it, borscht. And you have blinis. We have blintzes. I don't know if you've heard of blintzes. It's the same thing as a blini here. What's that? Pancakes, but with the cottage cheese inside of it. And you, yeah, it's almost like what you would have as a pierogi. We would have blintzes. And also your potato pierogies, if I'm saying it right. We call those knishes. Potato knishes or cabbage knishes. Want to try that word? Knishes. Knishes. Yeah. And it's a derivative of Jewish Russian origin. Yeah, and Ukrainian. And so, because there's a very big population of Jewish people in New York area too. So, so where else did we talk about? Some of you said you were in Virginia. This is a little blurry. Can this be?
No, it blurs here too.
Oh, okay. But thank you for doing this. Let's see. Virginia, here, let's see. Here's New York. New York City. Here's Boston. Washington, D.C. Anybody been to Washington? No, but that's down here. Virginia would be down in here. Nevada would be here. Arizona would be here. Wait, that's Utah. Here's Arizona. Here is Colorado, that none of you have been to. Here's Texas, big old Texas. And there's Alaska. Did you swim across from Russia? No? I never thanked you for Russia giving us Alaska many years ago, so thank you for giving us Alaska. It was a very nice present. Yeah, that was a very nice present, thank you. And then Hawaii's right here. So, what else do you want to talk about before we watch a video on accents? A lot of the ones that I've talked about, let me just look through my list. You will have, you will hear this gentleman doing. So, tell me what you think if you hear the difference. There was one other one I was going to talk to you about, but I can't remember. Since we do have a lot of Spanish-speaking people from Mexico, from Cuba, so we have a Latino, what we call Latino population, and they have a strong accent that you can pretty well understand. Like some of you said, when you hear it, you know they're not originally from the United States. So you let me know what you hear, and if you hear a difference. So should we give it a try? And he'll have a couple of other languages from other countries in here too.
Hey boys and girls, so today I'm going to do a video that's probably the most requested video that I get, and that is a video purely dedicated to accents. Be forewarned, some of them probably aren't perfect, but I tried my best. So let's carry on. This is what I normally sound like. I may have a New Jersey accent on some words, but I think for the most part this is pretty much middle American. This is mostly a New York City accent with the exception of Manhattan. And some people think that most people from New Jersey talk like this too, but that simply ain't true. Because if your home is in South Jersey, then you probably sound like this. I'll have wheat toast with butter. What you mean this guy? What'd this guy ever do to you? Be right back, I gotta fix my tractor. Yeah! This is one of my favorites. Apparently when polled, a good portion of people voted the Midwestern accent to sound the most pleasant. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I agree. I'm not sure about this guy, but I'm Navajo, and I think we have the best accent. Whoa, did you just see that guy fall off his board? Yeah, man, I totally just wiped out and that girl got it on film. Oh my god, I can't believe I got that hella hot guy losing his shorts on camera. I would like to say... Does that mean something different in the future? I will say. I have not eaten since this morning. I know, right? This guy's taking for... After this video, let's get something to eat. Chicken finger fat cut from grease trucks, how about that? But no, how about you just come to my house and my wife will cook you some samosa chop? Hey, what about me? Both of you always forget about me. How about we get that goat dancing, see?
So how was his Russian accent? Плохо?
Very nice.
And then he didn't do it, he talked like an urban American woman, meaning city, but he didn't talk like an African American. And they have their own pidgin language too, it's Ubonics. And so they speak in another, similar to Hawaiian and to down here in Creole, a language that they purposely, and most of these are purposeful, but where they don't want other people to understand what they're saying.
I have a question about that.
Yes,
About
please.
Phonics and other pidgin languages. Does it mean the difference in their pronunciation, or they use like different words?
Both. So they use different words, different slang and jargon, particularly the jargon. And they use, and the dialect is different. So it's a combination of two, which makes it doubly hard, even for a native speaker to understand. And again, particularly the Ubonics, I really believe it was purposely set up that way so they could have their own internal language.
Okay.
Yeah, some schools even in New York City for a while that were pretty much all black schools were teaching Ubonics as a language. Yeah, I don't know how much they're doing that still, but they were doing it for a while at least. Yeah, yeah. So can you do accents? Can you do a Russian accent?
Well, Russian perfectly.
You do it pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny because French accent sounded similar to Russian accent, and I don't know why. Because like when you hear French people speaking, it's really different, and the intonation is different. But when they speak English, it seems like similar.
Does it?
Yeah.
Anybody else feel that way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you? You know what I think? I think, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, I feel that when someone from Russia speaks English, they sometimes sound like they're speaking English with a German accent. Then, well, it's hard for you to maybe answer that because you all speak Russian. But I don't know if anybody else has ever said that to you, that sometimes I can't, I mean, I know you're Russian, but if I did know, sometimes I have a hard time knowing if you're Russian or German because of the accent. But I'm getting better at it, being here longer. Can you, when I speak, I don't know how often you hear a Native American speaker, English speaker from America. Do I sound any different accent-wise than others that you may have come across?
Not really.
No? That's good. Well, you know, people from England would say that we have English is not a very good language. You know, England, which is very proper and everything like that, they said we've taken it and made it so ugly, and some of the words that we use. Because you've learned both English and British vocabulary, right?
Yes.
Like in spelling?
A little bit.
A little bit? Because I know you use for apartments, you generally use the word flats, right? That's in British. Elevators, you call lifts, mostly, right?
Vacuum cleaner.
Vacuum cleaner?
Hoover. In British English.
Oh, really? It's Hoover?
Hoover.
Because that was like the first company that made vacuums was Hoover. But that's what they call them generally? I didn't know that. Is Hoovers? Oh, okay. How about is it a lolly? Or is it, no, maybe it's a, what's the word for truck? Truck, they have a different word for British English. What was it? Lorry? Lorry. Lorry instead of truck. Yeah.
From school program.
Oh, good. That's good that you're studying. So lorry, right. They use lorry, we use truck. I'm sure that there are many other terms too. So anything else we want to talk about in terms of accents?
I have a question. Is it very hard to understand a different accent? For example, you're from California and you're urban girl and urban girl from New York. Does it very hard to understand?
I think city to city it's easier to understand, particularly the northern up in this area. It's pretty easy to understand because people from cities have a tendency to talk faster and that sort of thing, so it makes it easier. But in California, like he was doing, he goes like, "Hey dude, how's it going, man?" They're like more cool, more laid back. And so we understand. They use some phrases that we may not use, but we certainly understand. It's down in this area that a lot of Americans outside of this area in Texas have a hard time understanding because it's not pidgin. It's just their accent is so thick, it's hard to understand the words that they're using. It's really, really hard, and it's mostly because of their accent. So, if you don't understand them, don't feel bad because most of us Americans don't understand people from that part of the South. We call this the Deep South, down here. Virginia, where you were at, is the South, but it's more northern. The Deep South is the furthest south you get. All in here. This is the Deep South. So, thank you for that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Well, some people think that if they are from Russia or from any other country, their accent will be hard to understand and even harsh, and they try to avoid accent and mimic American accent. What do you think about it? Should we keep our Russian accent because it's, I don't know, cool? Or should we try to mimic American accent?
That's a really good question. And I've actually been talking with a Russian woman who is a college student, not here in Vladivostok, but one of the other cities that I've been working in. And she speaks English really, really well. And she also has a lot of the American dialect because she watches Friends, the TV show Friends, and she watches Ellen DeGeneres. I don't know if you ever watch her TV show, but she watches it, and so she picks up on all of these phrases. So she uses a lot of American phrases that, unless you're American, you wouldn't use. But she's trying to lose her Russian accent. And so when I was there, she kept asking me over and over again, "Now, I'm going to say words in English and phrases. You tell me if it sounds Russian, if I have a Russian accent." And of course it did. And so she kept asking me, "Well, tell me how to say it without a Russian accent." So the 2 or 3 days that I was there, almost all the time when we saw each other, that's all she wanted to do is practice not sounding like a Russian. And I said, well, one, I don't think you're never going to not sound like one unless you take like voice lessons, like for actors and actresses who can turn on and turn off their accents. And then to answer your question, I said, and why would you want to? It's such a pretty sounding accent. It's more important that you know and can speak fluently English if that's what you want. But keeping your accent, I think, is wonderful, particularly if you were to come to the United States. People would be saying, "Oh, I wish I had an accent like yours." So I would say, be proud of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, my accent from New York, I never really liked. You talk like this all the time.
But if I want to work in America and I have a strong Russian accent, I think that nobody will offer me any job.
Well, it's more of pronunciation, I think, more than anything else. And it all depends on what kind of job you're looking for. If they're looking for someone who's going to do voiceovers, recordings of things, and they don't want somebody with a foreign accent, yes, maybe so. If they're trying to teach diction, proper pronunciation, maybe not. But there are so many, that to me is a very limited area in terms of work in using a language. I think it's more your fluency, how quickly you can understand me and you can respond in English, and how clearly you sound, regardless of your accent, how clearly you can pronounce words. Now, is there certain situations that you've already had that you have been told and you feel like you wouldn't be able to be successful because of your accent? Or you just assume that? You just think that?
I think that accent is very important for, especially if you're living in America. I think it's very important to lose your own accent.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, like somebody said here, it might have been you who said,
I think that you will never get a good job with high salary if you have a strong accent of another country.
I don't know that to be true though. Yeah, I really don't. I think it's more like I said, it's more with your fluency and your level of proficiency, more than anything. Think about, someone said it here, just when we first started, that America has a lot of people who live there, but they have a lot of different accents. Not just American accents, but they have international accents. Mexican, Spanish, French, whatever. And so our country is made up of immigrants. You know, the only indigenous people are Native American Indians. And they're not that many anymore.
And they also have their accent.
And they also have their accent. Right. And so everybody else in the United States comes from another country. Now, I was born in the United States, so I have an American dialect. But my relatives are actually Russian. I have Russian ancestry. And so 99% of the people in the United States who are Americans have somewhere in their history come from another country. And so, since we're a country of immigrants, I think that we, not all of us, unfortunately, but most of us respect having people still wanting to come and live in America. And unless you know, because you've had experiences where they have said to you, well, you speak English great, but because you have a Russian accent, we're not going to hire you, I don't really see it. I do, because there's just so many different dialects, accents in America. Anyway, you being able to speak fluently English, that I can understand you 100%, but you happen to have, hi, come on in. Please? The fact that I can understand you 100% was all that, I would think that's all that would matter in terms of that your job. And from what the little I'm hearing you speak, you seem to speak very fluently and very clearly.
What about Native Americans and Marshall Pueblo? They have their own dialect?
Yes, and the sad thing is, the different Indian tribes in America, you know, again, Native American, not from India, is that they all have their own language too. But it's like everywhere else, you know, you have it up in, you know, the Kudia area, that too, where the native languages are disappearing, and the older generation are trying to get the younger generation to at least remember or learn the native language, the indigenous language. Same thing for Native Americans, is that they are losing their native language, their indigenous language. Other than that, they speak English. Their dialect would be a little bit different. You could, if I had my eyes closed and someone walked in and spoke, I could probably tell they were a Native American just by the accent, the small dialect. But most of the Native American Indians are in this area. And now, actually the state with the most tribes of Indians is Oklahoma. Doesn't have a lot, but it has the most. So it's all in here. And they live on reservations. It's sort of like villages, small villages, where they don't have to follow a lot of the laws of the United States because they're sovereign in many ways, not in all ways. But one of the things, you know, and they're usually very, very poor, high rates of alcoholism, high rates of illiteracy, and that sort of thing, high rates of young deaths because of all of that. But most of the United States, you're not allowed to have gambling casinos. Las Vegas, obviously, do it. Other places you do. Like you used to have here in Vladivostok, but you can't have them anymore, that I know of as casinos. On Indian reservations, since they're sovereign, they can have them. And most of the Indian reservations now are casinos, like Las Vegas. Not as big, but like them. And now most of the Indians are super rich. They all drive really fancy cars, and they have lots and lots of money because because gambling brings them lots of money. And so I just thought I'd share that with you.
But for American people going to reservation, not like Native American, for
Right.
other Americans, going to reservation and to play in casino, is it legal?
Yes, yes. Because Colorado has casinos, and there's certain states that have them. If your state doesn't have them and you're gambling, that's against the law. But you can go to another state that has legal gambling, and that's fine. Yeah, because one of the big differences I found between Russia and the United States is you have more of a federal control over the country. We have some, but most of our control and our laws and things like that are by each state. They decide how they're going to run their own state. So that's why you'll have different sets of laws for all different sorts of things in the United States, with the U.S. government in Washington, D.C. having not a lot of influence on it.
I have a question. When people from, for example, Texas go to New York, and how many times they need that lose his accent, their accent?
Oh, I think two things. I think if someone from Texas goes to New York, depending on how old they are, they probably will never lose it. I mean, I moved out of New York, I'm going to say 44 years ago. No, wait, more. Let me. 48 years ago. Anyway, a long time, almost 50 years that I've been out of New York City. But people in the United States can tell, they say, are you from New York? And so it's been 50 years since almost that I've lived in New York, but I still have my New York accent. I mean, it's not as thick as it used to be, but I don't think you really lose it. And I was pretty young when I left. But if someone like me, if I was from Texas and I moved to New York, I would probably never lose it, if that's what you're asking. And the other thing is probably someone from Texas would never want to live in New York City anymore. It's like two different worlds. Cowboys and New Yorkers, they don't mix. Too much. Yeah.
What is the most different accent that you heard and try to understand?
Language?
No, accent, sorry.
Accent?
Yes, the word.
American accent? Or any?
Any English accent that is the most hard to understand.
English?
Yeah.
Down here in the Deep South. Go onto YouTube and you can type in something like put down Deep South, American Deep South Southern accent, something like that, and listen to it. Because I've seen YouTube videos, and again, I speak English. I cannot understand a word that they're saying at all. And they even have movies and stuff like that where there'll be someone from New York talking to somebody from the Deep South, and the person from New York is going like this, like, they just don't understand what they're saying. It's really hard. And I don't think they do it on purpose. It's not like pidgin language. I think they just have such a thick accent that unless you're from there, you don't understand it. Yeah? Oh, yes, thanks for coming. Okay, bye.
Have you ever heard Russian native accents?
Have I ever heard of a Russian?
Russian native different accents.
Probably. Well, I spent a little time in St. Petersburg, a little time in Moscow, and more here. So I've heard them, but if what you're going to ask is, I couldn't tell you. If there was someone from St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Vladivostok in the room talking English, I couldn't tell where they were from. Is that what you're going to ask, or what you mean to ask?
Yes.
Could you, if there was somebody from Vladivostok, someone from Moscow, someone from St. Petersburg speaking, even in Russian to you, could you tell the difference in their accents? You can? Pretty easily?
Well, I think there is a myth that there is Moscow accent, but they might speak slower than me in Vladivostok, because here in Vladivostok it's, as you explained, maybe similar to New York. It's really fast, but Moscow is also a big city. I personally couldn't tell the difference.
You couldn't.
No, I can't.
And so you understand everything that
Yeah.
a Moscow would say to you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can hear the very good accent in south part of Russia. So Rostov-na-Donu, Lipetsk, I don't know, some other. They have special accent with and s.
Ah.
So, but it's understand. When you hear it, you can understand, but you can hear this accent. It's
Yes, they have Ukrainian accent.
Yeah.
Oh, is that Ukrainian?
Yeah.
See, I wouldn't be able to tell Ukrainian. I mean, and that's what I was saying before. If you don't speak if it's not your native language, what's obvious to you is not really obvious to other people. That's why I said in Korea, anybody who speaks English who's not Korean, they just assume is from America, even though to me, it's real obvious they're not by their accent. And I'm really in the same situation here. If someone was talking Russian to me, or even English, I would, and you say, oh yeah, it's really easy, I can tell that they're not from here. I wouldn't be able to tell you. Yeah.
Another question, maybe a little bit different. So I teach a little English, just run the speaking club, and my students, they ask, okay, the articles is the hardest part in the English grammar, and we can get where to put a or the article, and what if we don't use it? Would Americans understand us? So that's the question. If we use articles wrong, is it hard to understand?
Now, if I were a linguist and a purist, what I would say is they would probably totally disagree with what I'm going to say, because my answer is no. To me, it doesn't make a difference. The main point is, unless you're gonna be a journalist or a linguist or something, if you misplace an article, the fact that you're understood is the main point. I started to take Russian classes here, but they wanted to stress grammar way too much, and I asked them if we could do more conversational. And I was very happy if I could have broken Russian. As long as I could go into a place and it was not going to be grammatically correct, if a Russian could understand me, and I could understand them good enough, that's all I'd be happy for. And I would say the same thing, it all depends on what you're planning on doing, but I would say a vast majority of people, if they can go and converse in another language and be understood, that's fine. And you know what I find out? Because I talk to Russians who speak English, and almost all of you speak it really well, but yes, some of you speak it better than others. You misplace or articles, like you were saying. A lot of times, I don't even, if you said something to me and you didn't say it perfectly grammatically correct, and I understood you, then you said right after that, could you tell me exactly how I said it to you? I probably couldn't, because I'm not even paying attention to whether you put the in or the a in, because I understood, I'm listening to it more holistically. So you could really, I mean, immediately after say, okay, repeat back to me what I just said, exactly like I said it, and I probably wouldn't repeat it back the way you said it, because I'm not listening for that.
Okay, it's very good. It's like, it would help me to explain people that it's not that, well, it is important, but
Right.
yeah, if you can express your idea, it's more important.
That's it. If you're trying to get your point across and be understood, yes. Now, your situation wanted to be an interpreter or something using the English language, obviously it would be different. You would need to speak it more proficiently, but most people want, like you said, it's a good way of putting it, they want to get their idea across. Yeah. Yeah.
From the first time when you go to Russia, if it's hard to listen our accent for you?
No. One time I was in another city and I was driving with these two other people that were friends and they were talking. And it wasn't hard, I mean it's not hard, but they were having a conversation in Russian. And then afterwards they turned to me and said, oh sorry, I didn't say anything, but they just felt bad that they were speaking in Russian. So they said, this is what we were talking about. And it was a very normal conversation. I said, oh, I thought you were angry at each other. I thought you were yelling at each other. And they laughed. They were just having a conversation about, oh, maybe we should go here and go get something to eat. Oh, I know of a good place to go. And I said, oh, that's what you were talking about? The tone of your voice suddenly, I thought you were yelling. I thought you were mad at each other. So it isn't hard for me, but sometimes it sounds as if people are mad. Russian, because it's more of a harsh language in terms of tone or pronunciation. And there was a hand up here? Yeah.
Recently I heard that American say not, doesn't, and don't. For example, she don't, not doesn't. Why is it?
Why do they do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it should be she doesn't, but she don't. That would be more like New York. You know, almost like perfectly, she don't do that. Hey, don't do that. Yeah, it's more of a inflection or dialect. Yeah, and sometimes, I don't want to say this in a way that sounds not racist, but you know, just in terms of class stereotype. But for Americans who are poorly educated, who have a tendency, if they're poorly educated, means they're poor, they don't have the money to be educated as well as others, they will speak that way, and they don't know that that's not proper. So there's two different cases. Most of the time, it's going to be that Americans themselves don't know that they're saying it improperly. It's just their lack of educational language training and education. And then places like New York use it a lot, just because they like to use it. Yeah. You know, another thing is, it's like a whole other language for me when I talk to philologists and linguists such as yourself, because you use all these grammatical terms, English grammatical terms, that I have no idea what you're talking about. I understand Russian better than the English grammar terms that you use. You ask a typical American to the proper grammar on something, they couldn't answer you. I, a lot of times, don't know the answer. If you ask me a grammatical question, I can tell you if I hear it, she don't do it, and she doesn't do it, I know that's wrong. Now, if you would ask me why it's wrong, we're not good at that. You know, we don't diagram sentences. When I was little, we did. In American education, we stopped doing that a long time ago. Good or bad, I don't know. But we can tell you if something sounds right or not. But we can't, if you were to ask me, is this the proper grammatical structure to do this? Is this the proper grammatical rule? I'd say, most of the time I'd probably tell you, honestly, I say, I don't know. If you say to me, I can tell you if it sounds right, but I can't tell you the reason behind it. So I'm very impressed with the level of grammatical structure and understanding you have. It's way more a higher level than American has.
Can I ask a question, but not about accent?
Yeah.
I would like to learn to study the third language, maybe European, but I can't choose between French and Spanish. Which of these languages are more required in America?
America?
Yeah, necessary maybe. Spanish or French?
What do you think?
Spanish.
By far.
But in Canada it's French.
Yes. Yeah, because up here, Montreal, it's a French club, right, and they have English and French as their official languages. And then over here, in that part of Canada, it's more English, and it's more British English, because it's British Columbia. So when you say Canada, I'd say more in this, here's Canada actually. Here's Montreal. I would say it's more in this area, if you're going to go to Canada, French. In the United States, I just read recently that Spanish is the most popular second language in the United States by 70%. So, and the reason is obvious, right? Mexico is the reason why.
And most people know Spanish in America.
There's a lot of, they don't come from Spain necessarily, they come from Mexico, they come from Latin America, exactly. And so, and a lot of them immigrate up, and so yes, if you're going to learn another language, you're welcome. If you're going to learn another language and you want to come to, it sounds like you want to come to the United States to work and live, or you're thinking about it. I would definitely say, if that's the case, go for Spanish for your second language. Here, I don't think it's used very often, but America, definitely Spanish.
Many people advise me that, told me that if you know English, it's not necessary to study Spanish or French. For what?
Well, it all depends. You know, as an educator, to be a teacher, an American, be a teacher. If you know Spanish, right now, like here, it's very hard to get jobs in America as a teacher. If you can speak Spanish, you can get a job almost anywhere in the United States because they want people who can speak Spanish. They don't have to have Spanish as their native language. They want people who can speak it. So it all depends. If you are planning to pick up another language anyway, and you're thinking about coming to America, I would say without question, Spanish. A lot of times on signs on the phone, when you pick up the phone and there's a message, they'll say it both in English and Spanish. They won't say it in French, they won't say it in German, they'll say it in Spanish.
I have just a comment to it, because if you learn Spanish, you can also go to Spain, and you can go to any Latin American country. Probably, like...
But if I want to live in Canada?
Another reason. French.
That's... What part of Canada do you want to live in?
Maybe Toronto. I don't know.
Okay, I think Toronto, I don't know, but I'm guessing Toronto may be more French-oriented. It wouldn't be Spanish for sure. But over on over by Vancouver, that area way over there, French is not part of their language as much. Certainly if you came in this area, yes, then I would say just the same thing I said for Spanish, I'd say French.
But not all native Americans or Canadians know French or Spanish.
Right. But if you're planning, I think the most important language is, any of these places, is English. But if you're wanting to pick up a second language and you're going to come here, Spanish, if you're going to go here, you're right, French. Does that help at all? You look still like...
I'm studying Chinese now, and I think, is it required there?
No, it's not required. But, guess what?
Maybe some corporations, companies, maybe they require Asian.
In the American...
Trade companies.
Maybe so. That's the thing, is you need to find out what kind of work you want to do and what kind of languages they want you to have. That's the best. But in the American schools, they are now the fastest growing. It's not big by any means, but the fastest growing new language is Mandarin Chinese. So many schools, if you speak Mandarin Chinese, you could get a job as a teacher in the United States because they're looking for people who can speak it. Yes?
Do Americans use any idioms in their daily life? Is there any use to study them?
Yes, we do use idioms. Can you think of, do you know any idioms?
Down and out.
Down and out.
Live on a shoestring. Cup of tea.
Wow, look at you. You're from New York. Yeah, down and out. You know what down and out means? No. I'm down and out. What does down and out mean?
To live on the street. To live without any money. To live penniless.
Yeah, having a lot of bad luck. Yes, and then living on a shoestring. A shoestring budget. What is that? Anybody?
To get by.
Yeah, barely getting by. Shoestring means you have very, very little money. So if you're on a shoestring budget, you're usually down and out.
What's hustle and bustle?
Hustle and bustle. That means talking fast, living fast, acting fast, walking fast. It's just a lot of activity. Like New York City, when you step onto the streets of New York City, it's hustle and bustle. Cars are honking, everything's just going really fast. A lot of
in a hurry. All the time
always in a hurry.
Hustle and bustle.
You don't say hustle and bustle. You just say hustle. Wait, hustle and bustle. Yeah, you say hustle and bustle. It's almost like one word. The hustle means you're just kind of getting along. You're hustling. Hustle really means you're taking advantage of people. Bustle just means very busy. But when you put hustle and bustle together, it just means, like you just said, it's just always on the move. Always on the move. In New York, if you had to come up with one idiom about New York, that would probably be the best one. Any other idioms? Do you know other one? Yeah.
Take for a ride.
Take it for a ride? Yeah, I've been taken for a ride. It doesn't mean that someone was kind enough to give me a lift in their car. What does taken for a ride mean?
It means to be fooled or cheated.
Exactly.
Deceived.
Taken advantage of. Boy, that person took me for a ride. Yeah? Wow. That's a New York accent. That's more of a New York, East Coast kind of idiom. Any others that you know?
To pass with flying colors.
What's that?
To pass easily, to not with any troubles, to do something.
Oh, to do something with, pass it with flying colors?
Yes.
Yeah, to do it easy. You know, your state exams, I hope you all pass them with flying colors. Yeah, yes?
Bottoms up.
Bottoms up. Cheers. Yeah, what's this Russian word for cheers?
Whoa!
That's an easy one to remember. What other ones? Teach me some Russian idioms. We don't have enough time? Any other American idioms that you know?
It's not my cup of tea.
It's not my cup of tea. What does that mean? What?
It's not for me.
It's not my cup of tea, it's something I don't like.
Yes.
It's not my piece of cake. Someone said that it's the same, yeah, not my cup of tea, not my piece of cake. It means the same exact thing.
But the question is, would I be sounding like an actress saying like this one?
Yes, and I'll come back to that in a minute because you had your hand up.
Yeah. Well, another one, American, like, what's up? I never know what to answer to it. When I'm asked, like, what's up? I'm puzzled. I never know what to say. What should I say?
And that's an East Coast kind of saying. What's up means just, how's it going? How are you doing? And all they want is, what's up? Oh, nothing much. What's up with you? Basically, the standard answer would be nothing much. They really don't want to know what's going on in your life.
Right. But I even don't know, should I say like, I'm good or
Yeah, let's see.
good?
I walked in and someone said, what's up? I wouldn't even say, I wouldn't say I'm good. It would be more in a phrase, a familiar way, I'd say, because when someone says what's up, they're saying it really, they wouldn't say it unless they knew you, and it's really informal. So I would give them an informal response back of, what's up? Oh, nothing much.
And there is no, how should the conversation go next after nothing much? Okay, if that's nothing, then goodbye.
No, it's another way, it's a very, very even more familiar way to say hi.
Oh, okay.
So then you go on to the next thing. And usually when someone says, it's like hi, if someone says hi, you usually go hi back. If someone says, what's up? Not much, what's up with you? You know what I'm saying? The same. And then you go into your conversation.
Okay.
Now going back to your question about if this woman that I was telling you about who wanted to lose her Russian accent, but she isn't losing it, but what she is, she's speaking like an American. Not only because she speaks it really well, but she uses idioms, she uses phrases that only if you would think if you're from America. And where she gets them is mostly from American TV. So she'll get these phrases that when we're having a conversation, she'll say something to me like, it's not my cup of tea, or what's up? I'm like, whoa. You know, because I'm not used to hearing that from a native Russian speaker. And I would ask people, every so often I do hear that, from a Russian, and I said, where are you picking this up? And they'll say mostly from American TV, maybe from movies, American movies. But Friends, the old TV show Friends, are you familiar with it?
Yeah.
Do any of you watch it or have watched it?
Yeah.
Do you agree? She says she gets most of her phrases, American phrases from watching Friends. She said when she first watched them the first time, she didn't know what they were meaning, like you were saying. But she kept watching it over and over again and figured out what was... Because they use that phrase like, what's up a lot in Friends. So that's where you can pick up, if I'm understanding what you were asking, if you want to pick up phrases like that, I would watch a lot of American TV shows.
But my problem is not that I know less of them, but the problem is that I'm sure that if I will use them there in America, they will take me like an American and not like an actress, because some of my friends go there and when they try to use some idiomatic phrasal or something like that, they were just laughed at, because it's like very, very correct, very British.
Right, yeah. If it's forced or used out of context, people will think it's a little strange that you're trying to act American, which is not a bad thing, but you're trying to act American. As opposed to if someone came up to you and said, I'll use your example, what's up? And you'll say, oh, nothing much, thank you. And how are you today? Then people think, wow, that was a strange answer. Even though it's a correct answer, it's a strange answer. But if you can't come back and you don't want to force it, like, oh, what's up? You don't want to do that kind of thing. But if you just say, what's up? Or not much, how you doing? Something like that. You come back with another familiar phrase, I think it's fine. But a lot of it is just so subtle. That's why it sometimes doesn't come across well. Because it's subtle. It's just a subtle thing. And I think if you spend more time there, you'll see how it's used in context and start to use it. Like this one woman I keep telling you about, she uses it quite well. It doesn't, the only thing that makes me notice it is because she's Russian. It's not because she used it in a funny way. And that's when I would say to her, wow, you speak like you're from New York City. Not your accent, but the words that you use. Where'd you learn that? Because she has never been there. She said totally from TV. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. How are we doing? Are we done?
If you want.
I'm here for you guys, so I don't want to, if you have other places you have to go, or I don't want to bore you, so I'll stay a little while longer if you want to talk about this or some other things.
Does anyone have any more questions? Rob?
Yes.
Is there any very difference between Australian and Canadian English?
In terms of words, yes, and even an accent. Canadian?
Canadian and Australian.
Yeah, well, I think Canadian, I don't know if there's a lot of words in Canada that are much different than American. Pronunciation for a few words are different. Unless you're from French Canadian, where then you may have a French accent. But Australian and American English there's certainly different phrases. Similar, I think, to British and American. And I'm getting better. I can almost now tell the difference between an Australian accent and a British accent. Can you?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can? It's really hard though, isn't it?
Well, I can tell only between British English and American. Like if you watch Harry Potter in the original, you can definitely understand that it is British.
Not by the words, but by the accent.
Yeah.
By that pronunciation.
And how about Australian?
I haven't heard it.
You don't hear it much, do you?
Australian is very quick and they just don't pronunciate the last letters.
Oh, okay.
They're very quick and they don't like in New York, but they quick too. And they have, I don't know, special sounds. Like, I know the difference pronunciation in meter. So some say meter, and meter. There's more quicker, and
Right.
Australian don't pronunciate R as the last R, and I is more shorter.
Oh, okay, yeah, and I can just, I can't get it all the time, but I can get it more now than I could before. If someone was saying, I could say, you're from Australia, aren't you? Where before I'd always say, you're from England, and they'd be totally insulting, of course. So, yeah, I see what you're saying. So I really don't know if there, you know, there's definitely a difference between Australian and American, so I'm assuming there's a difference between Canadian as well. And I think you had your hand up too, right?
Yeah, just a moment.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. I forgot my question.
Okay, if you think of it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The expression how are you getting is useful.
How are you getting?
How are you getting on?
How are you getting on? Yeah, you'd have to have the on at the end. How are you getting on? It's useful. That's again one of those, if you were to say it to me, I'd be, not laughing, but I'd be surprised that you knew that. Yeah, that means how are you doing? But it's more serious. It's like if you're feeling sick, you know, how are you getting on? You've been depressed or something, and one friend to another would say, how are you getting on? Are you getting over it? Are you getting better? Yes. So, and that's more familiar, not familiar in terms of informal, but friend between friend. Like you would know something about me that's a problem.
I got a question about the phrase, how much is the fish? It's an idiom or not?
How much is the fish?
Yeah.
I've never heard that. Maybe it is. I never heard of it. I mean, if someone came up to me and said, how much is the fish? I'd say, I don't know, I don't sell fish. Yes, White, you've heard that was an idiom?
I thought.
Has anybody else heard that?
Yes, it's from the song.
Originally it was Irish song, Mrs. Lal, and then Luftwaffe made it its own hymn, and then Scooter made it how much is the fish as it's.
Oh, really? So, I didn't even know that. So it's more of a...
It's very popular.
Is it? So what does it mean when you say it then? What does it mean to you? I mean, do you use it?
No.
And then when you've heard people use it, what are they implying?
We just can't understand what does it mean.
I'm like you. I'm Russian when it comes to that. I never even heard of it. And I didn't know where it would even have come from. Did you remember? Not yet?
I just wanted to know more information about you. Do you like Russia, and what do you have plans to stay here longer time?
Yeah, I do like it here very, very much.
Why?
Why? I hear that all the time. They'll say, and then when I tell them, they'll say, why are you here? And then I'll say, because I want to be. And they'll say, why? They'll say it stronger, why? And then I'll say, because I plan to be here for 2 years. And they're like, why? And then when I say, and I had a choice to come here, I had a choice between Vietnam and Russia. Then they really go, why? Bye.
Well, I think it's because Russian people think that, okay, America is the country of opportunity and so on. Yeah, everybody wants to go to America, and Russian people don't like to think that anyone wants to come to Russia. That's why for us it's a surprise.
I guess so. And I mean, I like America. I appreciate America. I actually appreciate America when I live away from America than when I'm there. It's like anywhere else. You take it for granted. But when I like to travel around the world, and I like to live and work in different places. I like being in new cultures. Not just as a tourist, because it's fun, but you don't really get to know the people or the culture. Living and working in another country is so different, because for those of you who've done it, even for a short period of time, it's just, you feel like you're more closer to the people, the culture, you have more time to understand it. And so I just like it. I like being in I had a chance to go to Vietnam, and I've been to Vietnam, but I hardly have been to Russia. I wanted to come to somewhere, and I've always been interested about Russia. And I wanted to go someplace that was so different than any place else I've ever been before. And Russia is very much that way for me. Because I like to learn more about a culture that I don't know much about. It's a struggle, it's hard at times, but that's part of it. I don't want to go to, I could go to England, I've been to England, I like it. I could go to Australia, I like it. But I can speak the language, and I can get by pretty easily without, just by moving there if I wanted to. I wanted to go someplace where it was so different that I have to learn so much about. Doing this and talking with people like you, I've learned so much about your country, and I'm so glad I came here. It was my choice to come, and I have no regrets in coming. I'm so glad. I'll be here this year, and I've been here since September. I'll be here all of next year. My position, I'm only allowed to be here for 2 years. The job that I have through the U.S. State Department only allows you to be in this program that I'm in for 2 years. And then you have to leave. I can't even go to another country. I have to come out of the program for 5 years, and then I can come back if I want to. So I love it. I'm really happy here. I had certain thoughts about, impressions about Russia, many of them wrong, most of them wrong, like most Americans. We don't know Russia. We don't know Russians. We know very little about you and your country. And what we do know, the little we do know, is wrong. And most of it is because of, when Russia was the USSR.
Yeah, like Iron Wall.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And we were enemies.
Yeah.
And my generation, to tell you, when I was like 8 years old, 10 years old, going to school, that was during the Khrushchev's time, and the Iron Curtain and the Cuban Missile Crisis and all of that, where we always would thought that Russia was going to try to blow us up at any moment, or USSR. And I'm sure in the USSR you were taught the same thing about America. We used to have drills, we had desks like this in our school, and they would do an alarm in our schools. I was little, and when that alarm went off, we had to immediately get underneath our desks, cover our heads like this, and turn away from windows. And it was a drill because USSR was going to bomb us and blow up the United States. And it was just practice, and they would never tell you when they were going to do it. So like a fire drill, remember the fire drill we had here the other day? We did fire drills, but we also did bomb drills. Because we thought the USSR was going to blow us up. So imagine that as a little kid, you're hearing this alarm, and you're having to run under your desk. And so that's what you believed, that Russia was going to, not Russia, but USSR was going to blow us up. So even though that was a long time ago, people still think of Russia that way. They think of Russia as the USSR. And obviously you're not. And part of my job is to understand and appreciate what a wonderful culture, what a wonderful people are here. And I am very lucky to have that. So when I do go back to the United States, I feel it's my job. I'm not like required to, but I feel like I have to. It's my responsibility to let people know what a wonderful place Russia is, because it really is. So it's a close community. You're teaching me a lot. I'm hopefully teaching you something. But when I go back to the United States, I want to teach other Americans that this would be a great place to come to. And it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean that honestly. Anything else?
So no?
No?
Yes, thank you for coming to our meeting, and I want to say thank you for Rob. I'm very glad that you're coming and tell us about accents. It was cool, and I'm very happy you're here. So thank you.